Alrighty. So today, like I said, it's kind of loaded because there's a lot of topics, or no, they just kind of all build off of each other. So we are talking today from the time where Jesus left the Garden of Gethsemane after suffering, to when he gets crucified. So we're just going to talk about all of that. So right after Peter cut off the ear of the soldier and Jesus healed him, they took him away and they took him to Caiaphas, which is like the high priest or whatever of the place, to be judged. So they took him there, and Caiaphas was judging him and like asking a bunch of questions, and a bunch of the other like high priests were there, and Jesus wouldn't say anything. He was just silent. So he was just, it said he was holding his peace. Which, if you think about it, had to be really freaking hard because Jesus could have done so many things to prove to them that he was the Christ and to, save his life. But he knew this is what he needed to do. So even though they were insulting him and they were spitting on him and they were doing all of these horrible things to him, he just stayed quiet. And then after a while, the priests were like, you know what? This is dumb. He should die. And then there was this maid that kept, there were several maids that kept finding Peter, and they're like, Peter, you were with him, go save him. And he's like, no, I don't know who he is. And he did that 3 times, which is what it says when Jesus warns Peter about denying Christ 3 times before the cock crew. And then it did, and then Peter was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And then he went and he's like feeling bad about it, right? So that is like a fulfillment of what Christ said. And then after Caiaphas was like tried him or questioned him, he was brought to Pilate, which is like the high priest. Like he's the top, right? And Pilate was like talking to him, and he's like, everyone's accusing you of all these things. Like, who are you? Are you Jesus the Christ? And he was like, yeah. And they're like, so, and Pilate was like, so what are you doing? Why aren't you like standing up for yourself? And Jesus didn't say anything. And so then Pilate was like, I don't find this man guilty. And so they have a tradition every year at Passover. I'm pretty sure this is the holiday they were celebrating, that they would release a prisoner. Just like they would choose a prisoner and release him into the world. And so Pilate was like, okay, I have a thief here. Would you rather release the thief or Christ? Because he's like, please release Christ. He's not guilty. But Pilate was also like, he's a Roman and he's not trusted by the Jews like at all. So he wanted to make sure he maintained his trust with the Jews so that he could keep his power and authority. But he also knew that Christ wasn't guilty of anything. So he was kind of put in a hard spot where he didn't know for sure, like he didn't really know what to do. He was like, I know Christ is not guilty, but if I release him, then I am going to be destroyed by the people. So he kind of had 2 evils to choose from. So anyway, so he was like, so I can release this thief, Barabbas, or I can release Christ. Please release Christ. And everyone's like, no, release the thief. We want to kill Christ. And he's like, well, okay. So he releases the thief, and then Pilate's wife is like, what are you doing? I've had so many bad dreams about this. Like, I know this is not good. Like, is there anything you can do? And he's like, I've tried all I can. So he washed his hands in front of all the people and then said, okay, I washed my hands of whatever is going to happen to Christ because I know I can't stop it. His blood is not on my hands. And everyone's like, that's fine. We will take the full responsibility because we want Christ to die. So Pilate just walked away and let it happen. And so then the people took Christ, and this was where pretty much all the physical torturing was going on. But keep in mind that, as I said yesterday, the atonement started when he was suffering in Gethsemane, but he was still experiencing that spiritual suffering the entire time he was going through all of this physical suffering. Like, that's a lot. His mind is, and like spirit is being tormented while his body is being tormented. Like, that's really, really overwhelming. And Christ did all of this for us. So all of this physical stuff that was going on, he was whipped. They like made a special whip with thorns in it so that when they whipped him, not only did the whip cut him, but the thorns cut him. So he was whipped. They stripped him like naked. They tried to feed him like really bad alcohol, and he kept spitting it out, and they were like force feeding it down his throat. they made a crown of thorns, which is everyone knows about, but they made a crown of thorns and they put it on his head. And they weren't gentle about it either. Like, it was a crown of thorns. They put it on and they shoved it on his head. Like, his scalp was bleeding, his back was bleeding, like he was just covered in blood. And then were they were walking up to the hill of Golgotha, which is where they crucified him. And he was carrying his cross, but at this point he was so weak because his spirit was like, he was done. There was nothing left in him, right? He was so weak that he collapsed. He could not carry the cross. So he had someone else carry it. The people found someone in the crowd, and then that person in the crowd had to carry the cross up to Golgotha while Christ just walked with them. And then once they got there, they laid him down and they nailed him to the cross and they put him up, right? And he was put up next to two thieves. So there was a thief on his left and a thief on his right, and that's where he was. And above him, they put a sign that said, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." And all of this, obviously, was made in an attempt to renounce the power that Jesus had. They were trying to embarrass him. They were trying to prove to the people that Christ wasn't the person they all thought he was. And they were trying to destroy the church, pretty much. Like, that was their goal. They wanted to destroy Christ and to destroy the church. And that's a lot. Like, it was a lot of suffering for Christ because he died for us. He went through all of this for us because he wanted us to succeed and he wanted us to have the opportunity to live with him and Heavenly Father again. And he went through a lot. There was a reason he had to do it. No other human could have done it. But because he had a mortal part from his mother Mary, he could die. But also because he had the immortal part from Heavenly Father, he chose to die. Because he had every power to just say, "No, I'm not going to." But he chose. He went through all of the suffering, all of the physical suffering and all of the spiritual suffering. And once he was put up on the cross, he said, "Okay, it's done. I'm done." And he died. And this, like, confused a lot of people because usually when you hang on the cross, that's like, takes a long time to die when you're hanging on a cross because you starve, you are in pain because you're hanging there with nails, but like, that hanging with nails doesn't kill you. So you just have to sit there and hang for days until you die. But Jesus died like right away, and everyone's like, "What just happened?" But they're like, "Nope, he's dead. For sure he's dead." So, like, this is a lot. I can't even emphasize enough how crazy this experience was for Christ and how hard this must have been. And the amount of love that he has for all of us, that he did it. Because, like I said yesterday, he had the option to say no. He had the option to be like, "No, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to live my life." But he knew what his responsibility was on earth, and he knew what he had to do, and so he did it. And he suffered, and oh man, it was really hard. Really, really, really hard for everyone involved. It was hard on Christ, and it was hard for all of his friends and his family to watch him go through this. But it was absolutely essential for Christ to die for us and to suffer the atonement for us so that we can be resurrected and so that we can live with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ again. And I hope you realize how important and how amazing that act was and what an amazing gift Christ is to us. Yeah. So this, I never told you where it was. This is in Matthew. It's pretty much all of chapter 27. It's like the last half of chapter 26, and then all of 27 is where this is in the scriptures. And I encourage you to read it. And then they also have a video of it on churchofjesuschrist.org where you can watch the video and where you can read the scriptures that go along with the videos. Because I think the video is really good. It really kind of puts in perspective what Christ had to endure and experience, and it puts into perspective how much love he has for us, because it actually shows you the kind of love that he has for the people he's suffering for. So I encourage you to read the scriptures and then also watch the videos because they're very, very good. So if you go into churchofjesuschrist.org and then you go into, there's a little Jesus Christ button, you click it, and then you click Life of Jesus Bible videos, and then you click Final Events, and then you'll get the list. And the list you want to look for is Jesus is tried by Caiaphas, Peter denies knowing him, Jesus is condemned before Pilate, and Jesus is scourged and crucified. Those were the 3 ones I talked about today. So go watch those. Awesome. Also make sure that you guys continue lighting the world, and that you smile and be positive and appreciate the amazing gift that Jesus Christ is in our life during this Christmas season. And I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day and amazing rest of your week.